Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Crumpets Tea and Sewing. My name is T. Today I am doing a sewing vlog of an Ann Adams pattern that I purchased off eBay some time ago. It is a printed pattern and it is number 4970. I purchased a size 16.5, and for a 16.5, the unfinished measurements for this pattern are 37 inches for the bust, 31 inches for the waist, and 41 inches for the hips. So I did two mock-ups. This is the second mock-up that I made. When I did the first mock-up, I found a couple of things. I found that I needed to add 1.5 inches to the bust, 1.5 inches to the waist, and that I also needed to lower the armhole area here. I found that after I did lower this armhole area, there was a little bit more of a gape here. So I am going to bring that in about 1/2 inch on both sides. But other than that, it fits really well and I'm pleased with how this garment is fitting. Because I increased the waist, I do need to also make adjustments to the skirt. I haven't got that far yet, but I will be doing that as well. I did do an adjustment to the sleeves, so I did a full bicep adjustment and I increased the sleeve by 1.5 inches as well. I also needed to make adjustments to the cuffs so that the cuff can fit the sleeve properly. So a lot of adjustments with this garment. I wasn't really happy with the amount of adjustments that I had to make, but I really like this pattern and I'm hoping to get some wear out of it. All right, so let me show you the fabric choices that I have made for this garment. I don't know which fabric I'm going to go with yet, so I selected two. And if I'm feeling ambitious, I might just make this pattern with both. I might use both fabrics with this particular pattern. So let me show you my fabric. So this first piece is a 100% cotton premium fabric that I purchased from Joann's. This is their premium cotton fabric, and I purchased this back in, I want to say, the fall, because I was really wanting to do a fall garment. I didn't get to do it, but I'm really looking forward to making something with this, and it might just be this pattern here. This second piece is another 100% premium cotton that is exclusively designed for Joann's. It is of a floral print as well, and it is, I think, tan or brown, some kind of tannish brown color. And I really like this neutral tone here. And I have a couple of shoes that I think would match this quite perfectly. And so that's one of the reasons why I chose this print here. For this project, I decided to go with the floral print from Joann's Fabrics. Because I purchased this piece about 2 years ago, I figured it was about time for it to come out of my stash. This piece is from Joann's Fabrics Buttercream collection, and it is a premium 100% cotton. I need to warn you all though that I will be recording a voiceover for a majority of this video because my home was more noisy than usual during the filming process. As I mentioned before, cutting the fabric can be a little bit tedious for me, so I'm using my dining room table to cut my fabric to prevent further injuries to my back, and I'm also using my compression gloves to release the tension in my hands because I have carpal tunnel. As far as the pattern's adjustments, I did have to make quite a few adjustments, and I did talk about that a little bit in the intro part of the video, but I am going to go into much more details on the adjustments that I made throughout the rest of the video. Mainly, I had to resize and redraft 6 out of 8 of the original pattern pieces. I did not have to redraft the collar and the front facings because I did not have to do any adjustments to the neckline or the shoulder. Significant alterations were made to the skirt, but I'll talk more on that later. After cutting out my fabric, I started with steps number 1 and 2 from the pattern's instructions, which include stitching the darts in the front and back of the bodice. At this point, I realized that this pattern is not beginner friendly. In fact, it is very much an advanced pattern. Afterwards, I pressed the darts towards the center seam of the front and back of the bodice. I am on this step right here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the interfacing to the collar and do all of the stitching and basting and all of that to prepare the collar for the to put on the bodice. And then I will return and report my progress at that point. Right now I am on step number 3. So it is the step right here where I need to basically do these little gathering stitches here and put the collar on the back and front bodice. And I was stumped on this for about 10 minutes until I could figure out exactly what the instructions was trying to tell me, because there's so little instructions here that I just for some reason I just didn't understand what was going on there. But I did construct the collar piece. So basically it is 2 pieces of fabric and 1 piece of interfacing. The instructions tell you to do gathering stitches on both the left and right end of the collar. I think that's a really cool, cute detail. The instructions didn't tell me to do a top stitch or under stitch. I just did a top stitch here, so that way when I wash it later on, it'll stay in place. So that's the step that I am on now. Actually, I just completed that step, so I'm going to go ahead and attach this to the bodice. And after I attach that to the bodice, I'm going to go ahead and work on the front facing as well as the sleeve and the cuffs, and then I will come back to report my progress. Okay everyone, so here is my progress thus far on this project. I did attach the front facing on the left and the right side of the bodice. I also sewed the front and the back of the skirt, but the skirt is not attached to the bodice at this point. And I also did the sleeves and I did the cuffs. So pretty much almost everything is done. I need to adjust this collar here, and I need to go ahead and baste that together. And then after I baste that together, I'm going to hand stitch that down underneath the lapel, because this is how it's supposed to look. And as I stated before, I did the cuffs, but I did not attach them to the sleeves yet. So that's what I need to do. I need to attach the sleeve to the cuff and create a seam for the sleeve, flip that over, and then the cuffs will be done and I can attach the sleeves to my garment. Because the skirt pattern was so wide at the bottom and I was working with a 45-inch white fabric, I had to take off about 7 inches from off the bottom of the original pattern. So I had to create my own pattern. The skirt is way shorter than the original design, but I would have needed to take off 4.5 inches anyway. I would have had to make that adjustment anyway because I'm so short. So really there's only about a 3-inch difference, or a little bit under 3 inches from the original pattern in the length of the skirt. The pattern calls for a 1 1/4 inch hem allowance. I'm just going to do a narrow hem allowance because I had to take so much off of the original skirt's pattern. But other than that, everything is coming along really great. In hindsight, I think I needed a different color for the collar because everything is blending in. And I probably would use a cloth interfacing instead of a featherweight interfacing because this has a lot of structure to it. And I just want something a little bit more drapier. I did leave the left side open here because a zipper goes here. So I'm going to, once I finish everything on here, I'll put the zipper in. That'll be the second to last thing that I will do. The hem will be the last thing because it has to sit overnight. I did a poll question on Instagram on whether or not I should use these red buttons for this project, and out of 55 people, 85% said yes, and I think they are right. This is going to be a really cute detail. The belt I purchased from Walmart. It came in a set of 3 and it was like $10 or something like that. So that's where I'm at with this project so far. Joining the bodice to the skirt was probably the easiest task throughout this whole process, and I'm so glad that it was, because the directions did not give any detailed instructions on how to do this. Basically, the directions say to join the bodice at waistline, and that's it. And if it were that simple, then I would say that the directions are sufficient to complete this step, but it's not. You need to pay particular attention to the left side where the opening for the zipper is placed. I have found that stitching too close to the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance line it makes it hard to attach the zipper to the garment. Instead, I had to sew about 1/4 inch away from the seam allowance to give myself room to work with. I later went back to stitch up to the seam allowance, but they don't tell you any of this, or they don't give you any markings or notches to help guide you on the right path. The directions for assembling the cuffs were similar to the directions for joining the bodice and the skirt. It just seriously lacked directions, and it's probably due to the fact that this is an intermediate or an advanced pattern. So there's that. This pattern has about a half a page or less of instructions, but I still really do like the pattern, and I also can't wait to make it again. So the directions are not a deterrent for me making this pattern again, because I really do love the pattern. As far as the alterations and adjustments, I talked about that in the beginning of the video, but I forgot to list my finished measurements in that segment, so I'll just list that here. So for my bust, it's measuring for about 38.5 inches, for my waist 33.5 inches, and for my hips 48 inches. So my hips measure at about 39 to 40 inches. And the reason why there is a significant difference between the finished measurements and my natural measurements is because the dress is supposed to be a little bit more loose fitting at the bottom. The bodice is more close fitting, but the skirt is more loose fitting, which I really do like that design. As far as my likes and dislikes with this garment, I love everything about this garment except for the fact that it has a side zipper. I'm not a fan of side zippers, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. I'm going to first go ahead and tell you about my likes. The first thing that I like about this garment is the fact that it has a really cool collar detail. I think the collar is very unique and it looks business casual, which is very cute. The bodice is also something that I really like. It's semi-fitted and it has a really cool detail going down the front where you can place buttons down the center front of the garment. I also like the fact that it has cuffs on the sleeves, because I think that the cuffs on the sleeves add to the business casual look. The skirt is an A-line skirt, which has a bit of a flare, and that flare starts from the hips and goes down to the knees. I really love that look. The only dislike that I have is, as I mentioned before, is with the side zipper. I'm not a fan of side zippers, mostly because I think putting a side zipper in a garment is an indication that I'm going to have trouble getting in and out of that garment. And this piece is no exception. To get in and out of the garment, I have to first step into the garment and ease the garment up on my body across my back. I generally like to put my garments on using the overhead method, but because this is the only dislike that I have with this garment, I figured that I can live with it. Attaching the collar to the dress and the lapel was probably one of the most foreign things that I've done during my years of sewing. So if it appears as if I don't know what I'm doing, it's probably because I don't. I use the whip stitch method to tack the collar in place here. It looks right. And more importantly, it looks like the dress on the pattern's instructions, so it must be right? Now on to the very last step before hemming, sewing the buttonholes on the front of the bodice. When it comes to sewing buttonholes on my garments, I like to use a really nice machine that has an automatic buttonholer, because I'm not really good at sewing buttonholes onto my garments. Currently, I am using this Eversewn machine. I received this machine from my husband as a Christmas gift, and I am really excited that I received this. It's a really nice machine, and I can't wait to give you guys my pattern review of this machine. So this is what the final buttonholes look like on my garment. Not too bad. And here is the finished dress and the reveal.